Okay, so today's session is going to be part 2 of our family creation training. This is just our regular Revit training project splash page, but I have it open so we can import it into our a project environment and start flexing it like in a real project, what would happen. The other thing that we went to is we went to the Advanta? Is that it? Advanta. And we went and saw, okay, hey, they got one of these microwave base cabinets and they have some dimensions, so we're going to model our model based off of this. But we want to make it parametric to where we can get these different sizes. Okay, so, all right. Anytime you create a brand new family, you have new, and then you hit family, and of course it wants to think about something. And it should take you to our BIM support 19 templates, family templates, English 1. And in there you'll notice that I actually have a base cabinet LBA-R19 Revit family template. And I created that on purpose because it has all of the parameters that all of our other base cabinets have. So if you needed to create a custom base cabinet, you could at least start with this template and it will have all of the parameters that, like I said, all of our other base cabinets have. I'm going to show you how to create a couple of these just so you know how, but if you start with the right template, you should be good to go. The other thing to note is that even in a regular out-of-the-box template for casework, you're going to have a center reference plane, a left reference plane, a right reference plane, a back reference plane, and a front reference plane. And then if you go to the actual front elevation, you'll see that there is probably a top reference plane, and that's for you to start constraining your extruded content to those reference planes. Reference planes are extremely important in family creation because you want all of your dimensions to the reference plane, and then have that flex, and then have your extrusions and your modeled content aligned locked to those reference planes. So as the reference plane moves, the extrusion moves with it. So what I'm going to do to start off with is I'm going to kind of jump back and forth to this. We know this is kind of it's got a base with a toe kick and a toe kick height. Looks like it's got a drawer. It probably has two, I want to say, I don't want to call them shelves, but that's kind of a shelf. And then there's one down here that covers up what's underneath the back of the toe kick. So we need to model that. And at least 3 sides, probably 4. I'm not sure how we're going to do that top yet, but I'm going to make it 3 sides and then maybe make an extrusion that goes in between the two right there. So let's first start with the kind of the base where that toe kick height and everything is. So first thing I want to do is I want to create a reference plane. So I always use shortcut keys. So RP is reference plane for me. And I'm just going to go from the front and I'm going to draw one that kind of comes across here like this. I'm going to give it a dimension from the front to there. And then I'm going to assign that dimension to one of our parameters. And our parameters, I actually have a toe depth right here and a toe height. And just if you didn't know, you can reorganize your parameters by using these buttons down here. This moves it up, this moves it down. This actually will sort all your parameters by alphabetical order from A to Z. This one will do it from Z to A. But I'm just going to move this up to where it's with toe height. And right now our toe depth is at 3 inches. That's fine. I'll leave it like that. And then I am going to take this guy and I'm going to label him the toe depth dimension, and now it is parameterized where that thing will move and change depth. All right, now all I'm going to do is I'm going to go create extrusion, and I'm just going to draw a box inside here, and I'm going to align those to my reference planes, because what I'm doing is just a generic extrusion. I'm going to lock them. That's going to represent our kind of base toe extrusion at the bottom of our base cabinet. that in there, like that. So right now, its extrusion is coming from 0 up 1 foot. I'm going to leave it like that because I'm going to shift to an elevation and then align lock the top of that extrusion to my toe height parameter. So I'm going to complete that. Just to make sure that this guy is working correctly, I'm just going to open up my parameters. I'm going to change my depth to 6 inches and say apply, and it changed it. The extrusion moved with it, so that's working so far so good. And in Revit terms in the world, you'll probably, or if you read a blog or something like that, you'll hear them making reference to flexing your family, and that's what that is. It's changing the parameters to see if the extrusions and everything go with it. And if it doesn't, you didn't either align lock something to it, or it actually might throw you a warning. And I intentionally try sometimes to break the family. I try to do stuff to make it within reason, to make it break the family, just so when it gets in a project environment that it doesn't break on you and then you don't know what to do and you don't know how to fix it. But you have to be somewhat realistic. Obviously, you're not going to have a base cabinet that's got extrusions on both sides and it's only going to be 1/4 of an inch wide. You know, if you were to try to squeeze it that much, it would probably throw you an error and say something along the lines of can't make extrusion, wants to delete it, and then you've blown up and you've broken your family. So within reasons, try to flex it and try to break it. So, all right, now I'm going to go to the front elevation. You'll notice that, oh, look what it did. It put my extrusion up here at this reference plane, and that was my fault because when I created this initial extrusion, I didn't check. So let's go create extrusion. I didn't check or set which work plate I was on. I assumed that we were on the reference plane, but it was on the reference plane top. So you can fix that. So I'm going to cancel out of this. If I select this, I can say edit work plane and tell it from the top I want it to be with the reference level, say OK. Now when I go back to my front, you'll see that it is actually associated with the reference level. Okay. Now I need to assign this is my toe kick height. I need to create a reference plane and draw it from one side to the other, and then assign that a dimension from my reference plane to, or my reference level to my reference plane, and then give that guy the label of toe height, which is 4 inches. And you'll notice that it changes from a regular dimension to an actual labeled dimension. Now all I have to do is align lock the reference plane to my extrusion and lock it, and now I flex it. So I go back, I come here and I say I want this to be a 1 foot high toe kick, and I hit apply, and it's now extruding and stretching with what we want it to. Okay, so that's our base. So if I go to the 3D, you'll see there's our base where our toe kick is going. What's your question?
You lock to the top, but not to the base.
No, because this thing is already, when it was edit work plane, it was initially assigned to that reference level. So it knows to start at the reference level and then extrude up. Is how that works. So, okay. All right, so the other thing I neglected to tell you is I already had another reference plane in here, which is basically labeled front or face of door drawer. So I'm going to make all my box of what this cabinet's going to be, and then I'm going to make some extrusions that kind of go on front of it. That is the front of my drawer, face of my drawer, or something along those lines. Okay, now let's go back to our little photo. I'm going to make this extrusion that goes on top of our base, and my guess is it's probably some sort of 3/4 inch particle board or some sort of wood or something. So I'm going to make my extrusion 3/4 inches all the way around. So to do that, either create some more reference planes that are 3/4 of an inch off, and I'm going in because I want my out to out, or I think you can copy these. Nope, won't let me copy them. So I have to hit reference plane and like that. So this one, you kind of have to make a decision. Do you want to make this a parameter that is flexible to where you can change the thickness of that, or does it really matter? I'm going to leave it at 3/4 inch because that's pretty much the kind of standard that they use. So all I'm going to do is just dimension from the outside in, and that's important because this reference plane is being flexed by this dimension. So as it moves, it will then, if I make this guy 3/4 inch and then lock it, it will move that reference plane with it as the depth or the width of this particular cabinet flexes. If I was to go from this dimension to this dimension, sometimes that can break the family. It's kind of, you haven't picked the one that kind of governs the other, and you're telling this one inside to govern this one, and it might break or over constrain or want it to delete that width dimension as well.
Think of it as the primary reference plane.
Yeah, think of what's kind of out of your box or out of the template as your primary reference planes. Those are the things that you want to flex and everything. The other thing I forgot to mention was this particular family, this reference plane and this reference plane, so the back and the center are actually ticked to define the origin. So where it crosses of those two reference planes is the insertion point of your family when you go to place it in your model. I said the back and the center, so now when you go to place it, you can place it directly on the wall, and it's the back of your cabinet, and everything kind of extrudes outward from that. And then the center is just kind of, here's the center of my casework.
That's handy for if you need to mirror it. You can mirror it about the center.
Correct, yes, because it will mirror about the center. You're exactly right. So when you need to mirror your casework, that you're exactly right. It wants to mirror over that origin reference plane. So I'm glad you mentioned that because I would have forgotten to add the mirroring function on that. So, all right, so real quickly, I'm going to dimension these other ones. So I have outside to in, and I want this guy to be 35, and then lock it, and then take this one. This is the boring part of watching me create a family, is changing dimension numbers and stuff like that. All right, so now you can kind of see I have my little edge that I want, and now all I'm going to do is I'm going to create another extrusion. This time I'm going to pick, and I'm going to pick my reference planes and lock them as I pick them, and then I'll just clean up with the trim function here momentarily. This, that, and we are going to use this bottom one, and then I'm going to isolate just those. And then if you didn't know, SL is split line. Split line, you need to split this bottom line because when I go to trim this guy, he's then going to clean up and not take, and it leaves me this guy over here. So
when you do that, does it keep your align lock on both segments, or do you have to re-align lock them?
Well, that's a good question. Let's hide reset. We'll select that one, and I don't see a lock to that, but let's select this one, and I still don't see a lock. Oh, I didn't lock it?
But they want to be on that the top of the totem. Right,
No, they're going to
plan?
come out.
You're in plan? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm in plan. They're going to come out. So, good catch. I need to align lock that guy, and then align lock that guy. And how come he didn't align lock? There we go. And then clean up this. Gosh, sometimes it's hard to select this stuff when you're on this big screen and this.
Yeah.
I don't ever have this problem. All right, so I have everything aligned locked to my reference planes. I go like that. Oh, did I forget to? Oh, I didn't check my reference level. Now, before you create your extrusion, you can actually set your reference plane to be, I'm gonna do that right now. I'm gonna set it to reference level. That way I start from that reference level. And so now this guy is gonna start from the reference level and he's gonna go up 1 foot, but I really need him to start at the top of that toe height because that's what's extruding out of the toe height. So I'm gonna go back to my front view and you'll notice there's my extrusion. All right, I'm going to drag this guy up now like that. Now I'm just going to align lock the bottom of my extrusion to there. And then I'm going to align lock the top of my extrusion to the overall height of my, okay? Now I look at my 3-dimension and there you go, that's what I have so far. So, is that what we have here? Probably not.
Missing the face frame.
We need the face frame right there. We probably need some face down here that's behind the drawer. So we have to be a little bit creative on how we want to do this. So let's go to the front and let's do the drawer height. So I'm going to basically create a reference plane, and I need to think about this. If the height of this gets bigger, do we want the drawer height to flex and get bigger with the cabinet, or do we want the opening to flex and be bigger with the cabinet?
Well, realistically, is this a base cabinet? And I mean, there are 2 heights, right? They're 34 and 36 inches.
You can also go up to 42.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I
But
would say flex the drawer because most microwaves are, like if it's just like a countertop type microwave that can set on that shelf, it's usually a
Fixed height.
rough
Yeah.
standard height.
yeah, and right now this particular one is, they're saying it's all 15 3/4 inch high is your opening. So my guess is if this height changes, this opening stays the same and your drawer just happens to get bigger. So, all right, so we're gonna do that then. We are going to basically now dimension from the top and we wanna come down, but that's not our opening. We have this little face plate up here that goes on top of that. So let's create that first. Let's draw a reference plane over here. And now, question is, should we extrude it from the face back or should we extrude it from the side over? I'm gonna extrude it from the side over. And so I'm gonna go right side. And let's see here, this is the back, this is the front. And I want to do a reference plane that's just slightly inside here. Like this. I'm gonna make it 3/4 inches from the front. Like I said, I apologize for having to watch me change dimensions, and I'm gonna lock this. Other thing I like to do is I like to change this scale so I don't have these large dimensions. So I'll change this to like maybe 1.5. That way it's a little bit, a little bit smaller, a little bit more manageable. So we have this top plate, this top piece up here, and it's got to extrude from one side to the other, but it's got to be offset. So what we'll do is we'll do an extrusion. It's probably going to start my extrusion from the right. Let's go center, left, and right, and we'll extrude it out. And all I'm going to do is real quickly do this little. And you can do it either way. You can do it this way. You can select make sure you're selecting the reference planes and locking. Locking, and locking. Okay. And we'll say finish. Now when we go back to our front view, you'll probably see this little extrusion right here. But what we need to do is assign this guy a value of how thick that little top piece should be. And I think we have a parameter in there called top overlap. Yeah, top overlap. That's what we'll give it. So we're going to assign this top overlap 2 inches. And it moved it down. Now we're going to then align lock to that edge, and lock it that edge to that edge and lock it. And now we'll go back to our 3D and we'll see now we have a top edge there as well. Okay, so let's just copy that guy down. So all I'm going to do is take this extrusion, and the second that I copy it down, it's no longer align lock to anything, so you have to realign lock stuff to it. So I'm just going to stretch this stuff out. I'm just going to create another reference plane down here.
Oh, it loses the reference in all 4 sides.
Correct.
Oh,
It does. As soon as you copy that element, it loses all of its
that's in all
constraints.
6 sides.
Correct. All 6 sides, yep. So,
But because you built it extruding from the center line, it's still tied to that center line.
yeah, that's the reference that it starts with, and it wants to extrude out from that on both sides. And because I aligned locked my left and right on that right side, this guy down here is no longer align locked
That's
either.
the important one to remember.
Yeah.
You'll probably forget.
Yep. So you have to come back here and reassign that face to, and notice it's grabbing the wrong face, so I got to tab to that face and then lock it, and then that one and lock it, and it probably, yeah, it's probably on that front side. So we'll go back to the front, and I'm just going to make this bottom piece 1.5 inches. Sounds good to me. I don't think we need to parameterize that guy, but we'll just lock him so he's just this 1.5 inches and align to this guy there and lock. Align this guy to there and lock. You can see why this takes a little time. Because if you don't align lock this stuff and you want it to flex and be parameters, you know, so there we go. We're starting to get somewhere here. We probably need to create a little floor, a base, you know, bottom plate, and then a shelf. But prior to doing that, I'm going to create a duplicate type. I'm just going to call it test. And the reason why is because I don't want to have to click here and change all these different parameters. So this different type, the test type, is going to have a 1 foot toe height. It's going to have a 6-inch toe depth. I'm going to make its overall height 42 inches. I'm going to make its width. Where's width? I'm going to make its width 48 inches, and I'm going to say okay. And you can see that it flexed it, and I didn't get any warnings. And ooh, look what it did though. My toe got shorter. So, once again, I try to break it. Why did this toe height change? I don't know why. So, let's go back to this. And what happens if I change that toe height? Did I give it a 1 inch instead of 1 foot?
Yeah.
Oh,
you
yeah.
didn't throw foot.
That's why.
Oh, yeah, it was 1 inch instead of 1 foot.
Got it, okay. So there we go. So now when I want to flex it, all I got to do is just switch out this type, and I say apply, and it flips it back. And now it's flexing it faster than me having to change all those individual ones. So that's a good little tip to keep in mind. Okay, let's build the little floor and the shelf real quick extrusions. Let's go to the front. We know that we need this first one's going to be down here at the, let's call this toe height reference level. I'm naming it so I can find it in my reference planes when I want to set that reference plane. Or I could not name it and then just have to build it on the reference plane and then extrude it and line lock it to that reference plane. There's 2 different ways you can do it. So, but I'm going to go back to my reference level. I'm going to create an extrusion. I'm going to set that extrusion to the top of my toe height right there. I'm going to say okay. And now I'm going to, let's try something different. Let's go from that reference plane down to this reference plane. And it gives me those locks. Now I only have to align lock 2 out of the And we want to go to the front, which is this guy right here, right? Nope. That's our front. Now we want it behind that plate, right?
This is the,
Remember, here's our extrusion for the little faceplate piece at the bottom, right? And we want that,
yes.
we want it behind it.
Yeah.
And then in the back, we want it to there. Lock. And we're gonna say finish. It made it 1 foot tall. We're gonna go to our front level. Here it is right here. Now, I'm going to make this 3/4 inch, so I need to make another reference plane. That is half this guy. And I'm going to dimension that. You can see where the reference planes, Matt, you remember you said, hey, I opened up that family and had so many reference planes I couldn't really see. You can see how that gets like that, because you need a reference plane for everything to lock and stay a part of. Did I lock that? Yeah, I did. Okay, so now I'm going to align lock this guy and that guy, and I'm going to lock. Now I'm going to. Okay, so let's see. We were going to make this the shelf height, right? And I know that there is a parameter in here for shelf thickness, so I'm going to just drop this down like this. I'm now going to say, here is our. We're going to have to create another parameter called opening. And then from here, I'm going to give this guy the parameter of thickness, shelf thickness 1 inch. There we go. And then real quickly, I'm going to align lock this guy to there. There. Gosh, that means if you ever make that thickness 0, which is fine, it's going to delete that, and I don't think you'll ever want to make that thickness 0. In our other families, we have a line, symbolic line that represents the dashed line for our shelves. And for construction document purposes, we don't need a double line. We just need a single line that says, shelf. But there's been the argument for some people when they want something a little more presentation style, they want to show the thickness of that shelf. So we gave it a parameter of thickness, and those lines can be offset. There's not an actual extruded shelf in those families. It's just line work that represents that. That's why I'm making this statement, as if you ever go to 0 on your shelf height in this family, it's going to want to delete that extrusion, and that'll break the family. But all our other families, it's just a dash line, and then those dash lines can live on top of each other when it's set to 0. Just as an FYI. All right, so we need to create a parameter, and it's going to be a length parameter, and it's going to be opening height. So down at the bottom, you have edit parameter, you have new parameter, and you have delete parameter, and then of course your sort function. So we're going to create a new parameter, and we're going to put it in the dimensions, because that's where we have a bulk of our stuff, and we're going to name it opening height. And everything else looks good. It's going to be type, and we're going to say okay. And then we have opening height, and let's go back here, and it looks like they're all 15 3/4. So we're going to make this opening height 15.75 inch. And say okay. Now, just out of not curiosity, but let's say you wanted to lock that and make it to where when anybody ever wanted to put that family into your project, they could never change that opening height. If you put this value, control copy, into this formula value, control paste, and hit enter, this grays out, and it is no longer flexible. They cannot change that parameter. So it's something that, as an FYI to you, that hey, why is this parameter for opening height grayed out? Well, why is top space grayed out? Why is center space grayed out? Well, that's probably because there's a formula in there or something that's locking or graying that out. Okay? If it's a formula, it's probably associated with a couple other parameters, and as those parameters flex, it dictates what that parameter is. or it's someone actually put in this dimension into that space and they're taking that functionality away from you. So for our purposes, we are going to leave it to where you can change that. We'll say okay, and then we're going to come in here, select that dimension, and we are going to, where is it, opening height, right there. And there you go. Everything's looking good so far. Did I align lock the depth of that guy? Probably not. So let's give it a quick, hold on Max, I'll get to your question here in a second. Just out of curiosity, let's change this test, and then let's change our overall depth to like 3 feet as well. I think I did 3'6" and say apply. Now I'm going to go back to my 3D, and you should notice, oh no, that it did. It kept it. So I stand corrected, but sometimes...
Change it to 1 foot, see if it does.
Change what to 1 foot?
The overall depth of the cabinet.
All right.
Flex it the other way.
So test, and we'll give it the depth of 1 foot. Say okay.
Cool.
So far so good. It's flexing and it's not breaking, and we're doing all right. Say okay. What do you have, Max? You were about to ask me a
Go
question?
back to the
Front?
other parameter that you are showing when you create the opening.
When I created the parameter or when I created the extrusion?
When you create the parameter.
Okay.
Why it's not locked here?
Why is it not locked there?
Yes.
I do not have an answer for you on that. Some of
Do you need
these,
to lock?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't have the answer for you on that right now. I don't. I know that lock sometimes locks when you put a formula into it, and it's locking these other parameters because it's associated with 2 other parameters, or if you have equals, you know, let's say your drawer height equals your width, or your drawer height equals your toe height, it will lock that. That lock will Revit will automatically tick that. But I do not have an answer as to why it's not locked when you first initially start. And I'll figure that out. I'll look at Autodesk's support site, and once I know, I'll let you guys know. So I do not have an answer off the top of my head off of that.
And then to lock down 1 foot, the opening height, is there another way just do it, just instead of you create that parameter and put in a formula, can you just, when you do it, not have that parameter, just put dimension on the other view, and then
Oh,
lock the
yes.
dimension?
Correct. I see what you're saying. If you didn't want to create a parameter for that, you could lock that dimension from that grid line to that grid line, or that reference plane to that reference plane as the 1'5" or 1'3 3/4.
Oh.
And yes, you are
You just
correct.
lock the dimension.
And you lock that dimension, and it will always be that height. That's the
Okay.
other way you could do it as well. I'm not one to want to restrict the creativity of the designer, meaning like,
Yeah.
because we had this discussion this morning with Sonia and I, and it's like, okay, yes, this one is saying, hey, it only comes in a 15 3/4, but you could custom build it, and it could be 18 inches.
You could have it be a base cabinet for like an office where you want it taller for putting in file folders or something.
Correct. So we're going to create an extrusion. We want to set it from the front face. That's perfect. Say okay, and we are going to, we'll just draw it out here like this. And all right, so I'm going to finish this right now for a second, and I got to take a step back. In our families, we have this little tick that's called butt door. And that butt door is to make all of our drawers and all of our doors butt up against each other and create one line. And that was done intentionally because the standards committee said, hey, we don't need a double line for these 2 doors to come together. In actuality, in reality, there's 2 lines here, 2 edges. But for construction documents, we don't need these 2 lines because the second that you zoom out a little bit, those 2 lines become this one bold line, and it just reads awkward. It doesn't read as well. So we created a parameter called butt door that basically takes those doors, it butts them up against each other, and it creates one line, that then is nice and thin and it reads well for construction document purposes. But we also had it in there so when we had a presentation style where we have to do an elevation for maybe interiors and you guys are trying to pitch something to a client and you want those doors, maybe you want a gap between those two doors and it's an inch or a half inch or something. Maybe those doors are offset from the outside of the casework. So we created that parameter, which means that we have to basically add a couple more reference planes in all four directions here. And we'll go down here and right here. So Matt, there's more reference planes in here for you. So, and essentially what we're going to do is we're going to dimension from our outside reference plane to that guy, outside reference plane to that guy that we just created. We want this one to there. No, I don't know if we want that one. Yeah, we'll do it anyways. And then we want from toe height to there. And what we're going to do is now we're going to align lock to these before I assign that dimension string, that offset. Or was it? It was this guy. And then this guy. Like that. So what we have is this face plate that I haven't given its depth yet. I need to go to my right side. And now you know why I have this dimension or this reference plane that's called face of door. So I'm going to now align lock it to that face of door and lock it. And we go back to our 3D and we should have this floating face plate, which is going to represent our drawer. Okay? But let's go back to our front and let's assign these 4 dimensions. You don't have to grab them one at a time. You can grab all of them. Actually, just 3, right? No, this one. Sorry. And then we're going to give this, let's see, where is it? Center space, door offset, not the one we want. Door offset if but door. There we go. That's what we want. So we want the door drawer offset, and I should probably relabel that. But right now it's offset 3/8 of an inch from the outside edge, and it gives us that kind of double line. All right. But what you'll notice is in here, the second that I tick but door, there's a formula built in there that we can put into parameters that says, hey, if but door is ticked, we want this dimension, the top spacing. Ooh, maybe we don't want top spacing. Door offset, door offset. Yeah. Ooh, that top spacing's going to change because of this guy. We're going to get rid of him right here. We're saying if the but door is checked, it's going to assign this value a 0, and if it's not checked, it assigns it a 3/8 of an inch. And there you're telling it what depth is going to be. So we're going to say okay, and you'll notice that it's now at 0, and our drawer goes all the way to the edges of where we had that reference plane. Hence why I had to create a second reference plane, because that reference plane is now on top of this reference plane, and I needed that flexibility. All right, so once again, here we are. There's our drawer. We're going to do a real quick flex, make sure this is all looking good. Test, hit apply, and looks like something broke. Hence why we do this. So we're going to go back to this, and what it was this front face reference plane, gosh, if I can grab it and then drag, it doesn't have anything to tell, hey, stay with the front of the, as my depth of my casework changes, I need this front face to stay with it. So typically, what's the dimension of our drawer face? 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a dimension like this to there. We're going to select that reference plane and activate that dimension string and give it 0.75. And then we're going to lock it And now we go back to our three-dimensional view. Everything's looking good. Go back to here, change it from test to LBA base cabinet, and say okay. And we're looking good. All right, so now, are we done? Do we need a top? I don't think we need a top because it's going to fit underneath our casework, right?
Yep.
All right, so we need a drawer handle. We need, now what I would do is start assigning some value parameters to it in the sense of visibility. Right now, if I select all of these extrusions and I hit visibility settings, you'll notice that they're going to show in plan, front, back, left, right, and cut, when cut in plan and RCP. They're going to show coarse levels, medium levels, and fine levels. And I'm okay with that right now, but just so you know, if you need certain things not to show in plan or something. So like right now, this front drawer in plan might show when you look at it in plan, and you might not want it to. So you might want to hide that. And then the other thing that we typically do is on the reference level plan view, we typically do some annotation, symbolic lines that represent the under counter plan representation, so under counter plan projection. And when I create that, you'll notice it's just a dash line. And that is meant for, so when you go to place it, if you don't have your extruded elements visible in plan, you have something that you're referencing. Oh, how wide and how deep is this guy, and where do I place it? And then the other thing that these lines do, and I'm drawing a blank off the top of my head right now, but they can show underneath your counter as a dash line, as you know, kind of what it's representing. Yeah, as to what you're seeing and how wide those are. The other thing that we didn't do in this particular family is we haven't created the right and left toe kick lines. So when you put all of your casework together, you want to be able to turn off those lines because it's one, you know, yeah, it's one continuous, and you don't see those lines. So we need to do that as well. So real quickly, I'm just going to align lock this plan representation to the overall width of this guy like this, and like that. That.
Those are just lines? Or?
They're just lines, symbolic lines, like that. Okay, so if I had all of this 3D content, and let's say for some reason, visibility-wise, I didn't want the 3D content to show in those views, only in a 3D view. And then when I go to my plan representation, down in the family environment, you can turn on what's going to actually be visible. And when I hide the reference planes and dimensions, you should only see the plan representation of what you're going to see in your project environment. And that's how that is. Now, if I had that 3D content visible, say okay. And really, the visibility of this 3D content is kind of case by case sometimes. You have to, you get it into a project environment, and you're like, wow, I really don't need to see this. And you go into the family, you can tell it to turn off in that particular view. And then you don't have these issues. But now when I go back to reference level, you'll see that I see, you know, because that's what it's going to show in the project environment.
Is that by type or by the whole family?
That's by the whole family. So, all right, so let's go back to the front, and this is a classic example. Right now, when I bring this in, because of that extrusion, I'm going to see my left and my right lines every time I put it next to each other. And I don't want that. I want to be able to turn off those left and right lines at my toe kick. So I have to turn off this extrusion's visibility in the front and back view and say, okay. All right, now I'm going to take a symbolic line and annotate. I'm going to draw a symbolic line. It's going to basically be a casework projection. That's fine, casework projection. I'm going to draw a line on this side, and I'm going to draw a line on this side. All right, oops, wasn't vertical. Let's make that nice and vertical, okay? And before I align lock it to that edge, I need to align lock that to my toe height, okay? And how do I do that? I align from this reference plane to the node, and you'll see that the little node lights up. Can you see it? It's kind of small, but it lights up. And then when I click on that, it allows me to align lock that node to that line, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side and lock it to that line. And now my line work, which is not modeled content, will flex with my reference planes. And that's important too, because otherwise you'll get into an environment where, hey, I need this 6-inch high toe kick, and the line work, see, look, it's goofy, this line work isn't going all the way up, and that's because someone didn't line lock that. All right, now I got to be careful because I got a door offset reference plane, and I have two reference planes on top of each other. So what I typically do is I make sure that that butt door is turned off, so that guy is offset, and now this is my left reference plane that I need this line to lock to. So we're going to align lock that guy, lock, and then over here to the right reference plane, that guy, lock. All right, so the lines are there, but they're visible all the time. We need to assign a visibility parameter to it, and we already have one in here up in the graphics portion. We have a toe kick edge left and toe kick edge right. And if you remember from the previous one, the reason why it's default is that parameter was made as an instance parameter because we want to be able to, hey, it's this guy, we want the left one off, but on this one, when it's copied over, we want the right one off, and they're independent of each other, so they have to be instance-based parameters. And you can tell that by if you just come in here and edit, it's instance versus type, and that's just the type of parameter. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the left one, and when you click on it, you'll see here's the visibility, and then here's the little secret button right here, associate parameter value. When you click on that button, you now tell it to be toe kick left edge or toe kick edge left, and then you do the same for the right. Visibility, right, say okay. All right, so let's load this guy into a project. Let's put him into this project 1. And let's just place him over here. Let's go over here to our plan view. Let's align him to the back. That's interesting. I got some line work that, you know what I did? You guys catch what I did? When I placed that plan representation line, guess where I line locked it to? The butt door reference plan. That's exactly what I did. And it's because those two were on top of each other. So now I got to go back and fix that and make sure that that plan representation is in the right spot. All right. Here's the other thing. All right. That extrusion, and maybe is it because it's coming up above my casework? No, it isn't. That 3D extrusion is visible in plan view, and I don't want to see that stuff because it's showing through my my countertop, which doesn't have a masking region to mask anything underneath it. So there you go. As a case in point, if I was to change this guy, edit type, and go butt door, or not butt door, sorry. Yeah, butt door. Where's my butt door? Here it is. Okay. I know you guys are laughing because I keep saying butt.
Where's my butt door?
And you'll notice that my plan representation line is now on the outside edge because that's exactly what happened to me. So, All right, so now I forgot why I brought it in here. Oh, I wanted to check.
Visibility of the.
Yeah. I want to be able to take this guy and see if I can turn off the left toe kick and the right toe kick, and I can. And if that extrusion, if that was visible in this view, I wouldn't be able to turn off that edge. Because now if I take this guy and I copy him, and I bring him over to this side, how are we doing on time? Oh wow, we're done. I can now be able to turn this guy's left edge on and this guy's right edge on, and I have what looks like two pieces of base cabinet that are butted up against each other and everything. So we ran out of time. I didn't get to show you how to put the handle on and how to parameterize how wide that handle is or where it's located, but you kind of get the gist of it, of what needs to be done. But in an hour, you know, I basically explained how to kind of create a base cabinet family.
Two more minutes.
Sure, what do you want?
So when you do the say the panel, right? So you draw that panel intrusion first, and then you draw the four reference line, and you lock the four edge to the reference line. I think if you draw the reference line first, and then when you do the extrusion, the pink line, it shows the four locks same time, so you can lock the same
Correct,
time.
and I kind of showed you that when I created the four, and I highlighted onto the left and the right, but not the top and the bottom.
Okay.
And if I would have highlighted to the all four of them, yes, I could have done that. But where I get frustrated is when I initially click that spot and I drag to this spot. A lot of times that reference line, that pink line, wants to align lock to the face of a different extrusion instead of the reference plane. And if that comes up and you lock it to the face of that extrusion, you could potentially break the family and then not know why is this broken, because hence why I like doing it and making sure that I'm align locking it to the right reference plane. As you can see, I mistakenly align locked to the butt door reference plane, and giggle, and and you can see where I had some errors in there and everything.
Yes, that's right. If you have
This will be recorded.
Yeah. So there you go. The other thing I didn't get to show you is the filler end piece, the filler. So if you have like any questions with that, or maybe we can do a separate little training on putting the little filler piece in there.